What is good? It's your boy Roy, and this is another episode of Sync Gems. Pa pa pa. Today, we have a special guest. We have James Gardin. He has had placements in a lot of shows, a lot of networks, he's collaborated with really, really great players. And I love his vibe. Like, his vibe is so uplifting, and he presents himself as the male Lizzo of the music world, and I love it. I just love the specificity of his journey, where he's going, what he's building for himself. Love everything about this dude, and it was just an eye-opening interview for me. We get in a little bit deep in the beginning, and we talk about shyness and how coming in and molding himself into the identity he has now has helped him come out of his shell. It's a beautiful story, and yeah, the first 15 minutes are packed with like inspiring insights that super juicy. Later, we move on to the more practical stuff. We move on to the more sync-related stuff and being able to express oneself in the sync journey. We talk about the importance of feedback in a bit of a different way. You will see this happens a bit towards the end. This interview is full of gems. I rant quite a bit in this episode, so I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry. Hey. A few ways you can support the podcast. Go ahead, rate and review the podcast. This helps me a lot. This helps the podcast. This helps me see that you see me. This also helps other people see the podcast. And it just makes my day. Another thing is, if you're tired of YouTubes and influencers trying to sell you stuff, I see you. The problem with it is people end up entering the sync world with crazy expectations, and they fall off real quick. And in my opinion, mentoring is the way to go. It's a way to progress fast in the sync industry. What I do with my clients is I help them push themselves towards the direction they need to go. For 1 month, I will help you to take your career on to the next level. We will review your tracks, make them as syncable as possible, and connect you with the right libraries for your music. Plus, you'll have me on call. You can ask for my advice, ask for my help at any time. We will go on weekly calls and also be in constant communication throughout the weeks and months. I will be the voice in your ear. So hit me up and let's get it. Let's do it. Let's elevate you. And without further ado, my guy, James Gardin.
What's up?
It's the second time we are trying this. Bro, yeah, as we said before, it feels like we've known each other for some reason. I mean, you said you were a listener of the podcast, which is super humbling to me. And we were introduced by Dave Walker, which was on the podcast too.
Yeah.
And I want to know a little bit about your story with music and what brought you to where you are today, growing up, listening to music, being inspired. What was your trajectory like?
For sure. So for me, in high school is when I really started making music. I always credit, there's a movie some people might know of called 8 Mile. And when that movie came out, I think everyone was trying to battle and rap. But before then, I was super shy. And like, if I had to speak in front of a crowd, I would freeze. It was just like deathly shy. And through music and creating an alias and making music under a different name, I used to go by the name Filthy. I think I was able to like find my voice, and that's what music did for me. It made me be able to create a confidence that I didn't think James could have. And then as I got older, I was like, I can do this as James. I don't need to be someone else. I can be fully me. And we're here. And I'm me. And I've just been making music and trying to find other ways to use art to help other people find their voice the same way it did it for me.
Okay. I mean, you've kind of summarized the whole shebang. I like it. But I want you to even like go what was okay, so 8 Mile was the initial inspiration to start doing
Yeah.
it, but was grown like even growing up to that point, what were your inspirations? What do you feel like connected when you started
Mm.
making music and rapping? What do you feel like connected there? Like what were inspirations that connected for you when you started?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when I think about times even before then, I always remember growing up, my dad just playing records like Barry White, Michael Jackson, James Brown. And so soul music has always been a part of my upbringing, and just like having a connection to music, being able to make you feel something. I grew up in a church too. So my mom always had me in the choir, even though I was still shy. Like I was probably like lip syncing in the shower, in the choir. You weren't really hearing me. But I think I always like there was always a value and an understanding that music was a powerful tool. And so I think when I started making my own, I started realizing that like I could weld that power as well, as opposed to just appreciate it and see other people and it feel like something that's distant that I can't do. And I always credit one of my best friends, Jasmine Brown, who like he's a writer. He's written for a couple of TV shows that people have probably watched. One day when we were not in class doing a little truancy, I started freestyling and he was like, "Oh, that's actually good." And I was like, "Wait, maybe it is." And I just believed my friend. And I think that really gave me the confidence. I just needed one person to affirm it. And when I heard, I was like, "Oh, and it's someone I trust. Okay, then maybe I can do this."
Mm. We will get into it. I feel like the inf- external influence is often overlooked. You
Hmm.
know, like I feel like from that said, I remember when I was in Australia and I was lost musically. Like I was making music for uh, like I've been playing guitar and started singing 10 years before, but my friend heard me beatboxing and he was
Mm.
like, "Yo, that's really dope. You should go. You should." And I was dead broke, um, and I was a few dollars away from just like I don't know, just going back home to Israel or whatever. And he was like, "You should actually take a nap to the street and start doing this."
Oh wow.
And then I was like, "No, I'm too shy." And then he was like, "No, I'll go in with you. I'll go out there with you." So we
That's
went
dope.
out there, and I made $5, and since then I just like I couldn't stop. I could not
Yeah.
stop because I got this affirmation, like this. I saw somebody what somebody else sees in me,
Mm.
and I was so invested in what they saw. I was like, I want to see that as well.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. Do you resonate with that?
Nah, yeah, I think I think it's also I think sometimes we do not give enough value to that, because I think it's also like it takes bravery for someone to see something and tell you, right? And so, nah, that's powerful. Like I think a lot of times, if people are like speaking life into us, we can't let our insecurity block it or deny it. Like we have to accept it and try to like understand how we want to use it or not use it. But yeah, I think it's something powerful that we should really have way more value on.
Yeah, and I feel like um a lot of people who are very successful make it seem like they were by themselves in
Oh,
a
for
lot of
sure.
moments that they weren't. And that's
Yeah.
that's the biggest I feel like that's the biggest thing that I've lately learned is that sometimes yes, it's necessary to have that someone just take you by the hand and walk you through the fire. And because I feel like with all the hustle porn, it's like you gotta walk through the fire, you gotta do it by all that like the Gary V type stuff,
Yeah,
even though
yeah,
I
yeah.
love Gary V. It's like you just got to do this. You just got, but like when I think about great projects or great things that happen, they usually happen with more than one person. I mean,
Yeah,
unless
for
that
sure.
person is a fucking genius, a lot of the times it's just like it's in tandem with somebody, right, or something.
Always.
now, yeah, I mean, almost always, right? Like, even people like Edison, people
Hmm.
like the biggest people, the biggest thought leaders, have had teams of people around them who inspired them. Um, so I really appreciate you sharing that, and I wanted to ask, do you feel like um, the alias thing? Do you feel
Hmm.
like you kind of molded yourself into confidence through rap, and then it kind of you've seen yourself as this bloomed flower to then which you were able to give your name to, or how did it work for you?
Yeah, I think I think I was able to create a character, and like then in creating that character, like in my mind, I was able to separate them, right? So I could be like, James is shy, but Filthy's not. Filthy's not shy at all. And then I think it got to a point where, like, even when I was hanging out with my friends, not doing music, everyone just called me Filthy. And like, or they called me P. And so some people didn't even know my real name, which was kind of wild. Like, I'm like, no, my name is James. I'm like, your name's James. But I think it did allow me to build confidence on top of a foundation that I could sort of like be like, oh, I'm just building something and it's something separate of me. And I think just as I got older, I was just like, nah, that is still me. And it doesn't have to be like cloaked in some, it doesn't have to be Superman with the glasses on, you know? Like I don't need a Clark Kent and a Superman. I can just be me the whole time. I don't need a secret identity. Lex Luthor isn't after me, so I'm safe. Um, but yeah, I think like it allowed me to build this confidence. And then as I was building it, I think I just finally accepted that it was me all along. Like it was never really filthy. Like that's something I did in order to trick myself that I didn't need to be shy and to give myself permission. Um, but I could have always taken that permission and done it. I think I just wasn't ready back then. There was just like so much stuff I had to unlearn and like I don't know, unlike connect myself to who I thought I was before then.
Mm. What do you feel like made you shy?
Um, I don't know. Like I do try to look back and think what it I think like most children, I think I was really, really bold. Um like probably like, like 6 and under, usually you're super big. I think I may have had like an awkward phase around 9. Um and then I do remember like I was in a rap contest. Oddly enough, my first rap I wrote when I was 9. I didn't win. I think like I can sometimes be hard on myself if I don't succeed to a level I want to. So I might have interpreted that as like, oh, I'm just not good enough.
Mm.
Um, and just not, I think, yeah, not, wow, I feel like I'm in therapy. But like, I think now that I like reflect on it, I think a lot of it was like, I didn't know how to accept failure without attributing it to my identity. And so I think like earlier when I had things not work out how I wanted, I was like, oh, that must just be me. And I was like, telling myself that like if you lose that your team didn't win all those soccer games, oh that's because you're not a winner. um
Mm.
and I think through the journey of filthy I started realizing that like what I do isn't who I am. Like they're things I do. I think just earlier I didn't understand that.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting. I feel like so as you know, like the podcast does get very
Yeah,
philosophical at times, and I feel like that's it's where we're going for a second here, and that's completely fine. I feel like people need to understand themselves in order to understand what's blocking them, right?
that's real.
I can say that for myself, and you can maybe attest to it, or disagree. But like it's there comes a point in everybody's journey where they have to look back at what was what's the reason for
Hmm.
something. Like what's the it's so easy with dogs because I mean I love my dog, and we're we're going through stuff, and sometimes I can see that she's been through something through her reaction, right? So I can help her, I can help guide her out of that, right? Because I see it from an outside perspective. But in our own lives, in our own minds, a lot of the times nobody can see it. And there
Right.
are parents which are very sharp with it, like that know what to say, when to say, right? And then there's the ability to release a lot of the things in the moment. But there are parents which are a bit lost. They lose touch,
Yeah.
right? Like they don't know what to say. They just say what maybe they weren't told, or they act from their own trauma, and then like it becomes this whole thing where the journey in the end of the day is being able to take that away, to be filthy for a while,
Yeah. Right. Right.
um by all means, pun intended, and like that that peel that onion step by step, like until I feel like the most correct statement is, until we're 20 we accumulate all the layers, and from 20 till we die, we spend that time to peel the layers.
That's good.
And yeah, I feel like what you're saying is so powerful, because uh, I've had a very similar story, and that's why maybe we resonate on
Yeah.
a like immediately off the bat, because like I, I was told so many times what I cannot be, um, and because like I'm white and I have glasses and a lot of things which visually make me not the ideal fit like the only place that I fit in that is being like a next Eminem, which I never wanted to be.
Right.
And then it's like, well, who the fuck am I? you know and then at some point I find something like sync, which this is how we're gonna turn back into
Yeah.
into the professional stuff. And I find sync, and I'm like, well, nobody cares about my color here, nobody cares about anything. People just care about if what I make is dope and if it's real. And then it's kind of like my superpower started coming out in a more natural way, and I don't
That's
have
dope.
to wear the glasses, the Clark
Yeah.
Kent glass can't the Clark Kent glasses. um and I can just do my thing and do it over and over and over and over and over again. And then more people hear about it, and it's infectious, right? Because once it starts, once the a domino falls, it's just like
Keeps going.
and yeah, a few hundred tracks later, I'm just like I'm super stoked that this is the reality. So I appreciate you for being open and vulnerable with
Of
that.
course. Of course.
Mm. So from there, like you're we're going back to the story. You kind of you stopped making music as putting out music as filthy. You go back
Yeah.
to James Garden, and what happens then?
I think then, oddly enough, I think when I started making music that just felt more honest and more like me. Because I think a lot of the earlier stuff, it was me, but it was glimpses, right? Like I was figuring it out, and I guess I'm also wrestling with like who is Filthy and who is James, and sometimes those don't totally align. Once I started making music as myself, though, I think what I also realized is like I could connect other things to what I do. So if I'm working with youth, James the artist can walk in that room working with youth, and I don't have to be like these are separate lives. So I don't separate them. If I'm speaking at a professional event, I will mention that I still make music. Like, and so I think I was realizing that like I didn't have to uh, compartmentalize who I am in any way, and I could be fully me. And I think around that time, I ended up as James Gardin. I ended up signing with an indie label called Elect Recordings. That's actually where I met Dave, uh, and that's also where I started getting into sync. Like that around that time when I switched to my name is when like things started shifting. Um, and I started just getting more comfortable making stuff that I enjoy and taking more chances. Whether that's like singing more and being more melodic. I think before then I was very much like I got to keep it real. Only
Yeah.
dope rhymes and dope beats. That's all I'm giving you. And like,
Uh,
yeah, I gave myself and other people permission to be freer, and I didn't have to like hold people to standards that weren't realistic.
yeah, that's the beauty. I feel like when it's called my a good friend of mine calls it the God nod.
Mm,
When one thing again, like it tips the dominoes, and
yeah,
you sign into this label, you get. It's kind of what happened to me with the podcast. Is just like I was expecting to put a 10 podcasts to the world and see what happens, and I was like, maybe it'll create something good for me. I don't know. Like I just want to pick people's brains. It's just what I
right.
love doing naturally. And then like from then, it's just like it opened a whole world for me of collaboration, of human connections, of so many things that I cannot say that I would do without, that I
That's
could do
real.
without. Yeah. That's sick, bro. Mm. So you started through that indie label with Sync, and then what do the next steps look for you, because you're still performing at that stage, right? Like you're still
For sure.
doing all that kind of stuff.
So I mean,
So
like, I think around that time, like, I went into like, so when I got to the label, I'm like naturally a little competitive, and like even if it's healthy. So like I entered the label and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm the new guy. There's all these like other people and like a lot of artists I look up to and I'm friends with to this day were on the label. I'm like, oh, my numbers aren't as high. And so like I was like, I need to build on my catalog. So I started dropping a bunch of singles. I was working on albums. Um, and so I think like through that time I was just really, really like honing in and learning my sound and growing and growing and growing and trying to challenge myself to keep growing. Um and I think through that, once I like got my first placement, I was like, oh wait, okay, this is kind of cool. And then for me, I'm just like always a student, so I just started being like, all right, how do I learn more about why that worked or what worked about it, or was it just like lightning in a bottle? And then I'm very inquisitive, so like the owner of the label, I would just hit him up and ask him questions. All right, so who do we work with? So how does it work? So what are they usually looking for? So what do they like? So how should I format it? So okay, cool. Where can I listen to more stuff? And then I'm listening to stuff. I'm like, oh, I just noticed. Like there was a weird span. Well, before I was James Gardin, like I would always do 3-verse songs. It's wild. I'm like, that's a lot of rapping. And then I'm like, oh wait, I can do a verse, pre-chorus, chorus. I can do a bridge too, and have all these different options. And so like I just started challenging myself to like look at format differently. And it was cool though, because like I think what I wrote naturally already worked. So I was like, all I'm doing is changing format. I'm not changing who I am. I'm not changing what I care about and what I like to talk about. I'm just making it, I'm like, I'm plating it in a way that's appeasing to whoever I'm serving it to. Um, and yeah, I think that in that time was when I was really just like learning, and being like, oh, that works because of that. Okay, that makes sense. Let me try that out on the next song. So it was a lot of experimenting with singles and with projects.
word. So what can you give a few examples of things that worked for you, that you kind of that you lean on today?
Yeah, I think like I love a good chorus, and I think it's like choruses having space. I know like a lot of people who rap will like fill stuff up a lot with a bunch of ad libs, and like sometimes that's cool for a record. It adds texture. It gives like excitement. But I've noticed like leaving things open but not empty works really well for choruses. I always try to have verses feeling different and maybe adding different elements. Like maybe the first verse doesn't have ad libs and the second one has some sparse ones. Um, and really, I just think it's like it is about the words you say, but like when you're trying to make it, and I feel like the word universal just feels like kind of loaded because when you say to people who haven't done it, they're like, what does that actually mean? And I think it's just like making it be able to resonate with people from different access points. And I think there's ways we can talk about anything that tap into emotion. And I think that's really like the sauce. It's like, do you feel it when I say it this way, or does it feel like I'm just saying words to say words?
Mm.
Um, so I'm always like trying to figure out, okay, how can I make them feel what I'm saying, even more than like what I'm saying. Um,
Mm.
and I think a lot of that is like me like learning of like how do I like navigate and feel emotion and hold emotion. And then it's like, all right, cool. Like if I was frustrated, I'd probably um wouldn't be talking very flowy or very like it might be more choppy because I'm like trying to get the message across. But I'm trying to find the words. And so yeah, I think like I think really tapping into what makes people, and from my music, like I'm actually not making that much like frustrated music. So for me, it's like what makes people feel good? Like what
Mm.
makes you feel good? Like when it's being sung, what makes you want to sing along to it and you're smiling while you sing along to it. And so that's really what like if someone listens to a record and I can see a smile starting to come, or like I can see like them feel joy or hope, I'm like, okay, we're in the right direction. And so if I can feel that while if I can listen back to a record and like I can be like, whoo, I was having a tough day, but that kind of helped. I'm like, oh, we're going in the right direction. If it can help me have a good day, we're in the right
Yeah.
direction. We're definitely in the right direction.
That's sick, bro. I love it. Um, yeah, it makes me think about a lot of things, to be honest, with my own journey, because I feel like a lot of the things I do are amazing for me, like they're inspiring for me. Um, but I mean, for other people, they might be a little dark on the dark side.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
I mean, that being said, I've come into it knowing I want to make music for the next Spider Verse. So I was like,
that's dope.
how do I go into that and make it so so obvious that this is where it's going to, that this is where it's going to go? How do
Yeah,
I do that? And to be honest, like all the music that I've made is has a little bit of a gear towards it. So I feel like I don't know if I'm like the complete honest truth is I don't know if it'll ever be exactly where I want it to be, but I'm planting a seed for this specific goal that I have,
that's
which
fire.
is super interesting. It's just I feel like it takes away from maybe other things, which
Mm,
is what you're talking about, which I love. It's like, how does it make them feel? And there's a bit of a people pleasing tendency there, but it's also very necessary in something like
yeah,
sync, because you gotta gear something in order to get something out of it. I'm learning about it right now when I'm producing a lot of music for reality TV, and the last thing that I'm making it for is me.
right.
So it's like the complete opposite of all the superhero stuff I do, and it's just so cool to have that as a palate cleanser, as a way
Oh, for
of
sure.
getting out of this me. How do I feel? What do I want to convey? How do I want to be a superhero? How does this happen, and stuff like that. And I feel like there has to be a balancing between the two, right? Like between doing it for my own soul to putting it out and making it really resonate with people. And that's what I feel like. That's why I feel like people in LA do in Nashville do it so well. There's sometimes 20 people in a room writing a fucking song, right?
Right.
So I mean,
No,
like
no,
it's
yeah, that
yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Mm. And in the end of the day, it's everything is geared towards the outside world. There's no, I mean, even people like Bon Iver or people who like close themselves in a cabin. Yes, they make it for themselves, but they put it out,
Right.
which means they
It's
want
for
to find people who it resonates with, which is marketing, like
sure.
it or not.
Nah, it
So
definitely
yeah,
is.
yeah. So today in today's uh, I guess sing space or in today's music, how do you feel like you fit in with everything sync related, artist related, where do you feel like you stand?
So I think it's actually interesting because I think like I'm always like learning where I stand. I think like it changes ever so often. But I think right now I'm like in a space where it's maybe the most clear it's ever been. So jokingly, like when people ask what I make for sync, I always say I make male affordable Lizzo music. Like it's danceable, it's
Shit,
empowering, um,
sick.
but it's not as expensive. Uh, but I think
Not
like
as fat.
the I mean I already know a Lizzo placement is way more.
Oh yeah.
Like but like I think what I've realized though is that even as an artist, um, just cause like and not I don't think like I don't play by these rules, but I know like people like have ideas of like rap as a young man's sport. But I'm like, I can make groovy, empowering music forever. Like I could be 60 years old at a jazz festival, and if I'm up there with a live band, they're gonna let me play my groovy like empowering funk influence pop records. Like they're gonna be
Mm,
totally fine with that. And so I'm looking at like the long game of like what can I continue to make and keep growing it and having fun with it as an artist. Cause I still play out and still do shows, but now I'm like, all right, I can do these songs, but what songs do I really like singing? And what songs like do I have the most fun doing? And it's like that's gonna make the best show for people that come. If I go up there and I'm like going through the motions, it's not gonna really connect with them. And I'm not gonna have fun doing it. So it's even like in that sense of like serving the audience and myself, I'm trying to find that middle ground. And I think I've found it with like making just groovy, empowering music. And oddly enough, like I'm blessed that I'm in a position where like that's also what works for sync for me. The songs that I get placed multiple times are those like groovy joints about being comfortable in my own skin or like just self love records. And so I think right now I'm just in a space where I'm trying to lean in more to that and just like go all in on like I just want like big smiles and groovy records and like dance floors filled with people having a great time.
mm. Wow, being the male Lizzo, that's that is fire. That I mean,
Yeah.
like it doesn't get more specific than that. Um, I, whew, I've never heard about somebody explaining it like that. So that's fresh.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's fresh as hell. And, yeah, and I feel like the kind of the debate that I'm having, and I'm sure a lot of people who want to have artist careers have, is like, do I do stuff that is different for sync? And interestingly enough, I feel like if you dig enough, if you're a student enough, you find a niche where your emotions also your emotions and your professionalism come out about 50-50.
Yeah.
And then you're not the artist that puts out a song on Spotify every year, and you're also not making music for the devil. So it's like you're praise the Lord. No, but like, but it's just I feel like that's where it's at for me. Like being able to find that sweet spot between making an amazing track, and also, I mean, being able to put yourself out there.
Right.
And that's what I feel like that's where the world is going as well, is like there's so much quantity put out there. The world needs more quality, and nobody knows what AI is going to do. Nobody knows what it'll take, what it'll give, what all these things. Nobody knows. But I feel like the world has always called for originality, and today it calls even more for originality, and more to people who know what their direction is. Because there's so much information out there that many people just think that, again, with sync, the whole purpose of this podcast has become to humble people, to make
Mm.
them understand, hey, this takes this takes 3, sometimes 2 to 3 years till you see your first placement.
For sure.
Like this is not what you see sometimes in that like influencers push out, because I mean these influencers a lot of the times either they've been around for a long time and got an easy sync, or they've just been doing it for a long time and never want to actually tell you about it, which is suspicious by itself, right? Because
It
they're
really
not
is.
telling you about their process really, they're just telling you how you can do it, right? So I mean there's, to me, one of the purposes of this podcast is to be able to show people who really want to see behind the curtains, you know, people who really want to understand what these 6-figure placements look like, because you know what, I don't know what these 6-figure placements look like because I've never
I don't
gotten
yet
them.
either.
So I feel like this is a place, like a safe space for people to speak about like what it means. Like a lot of people who do get these 6-figure deals were in the right place in the right time. That's
For
important
sure.
to know. And I feel like people who listen to this are building themselves to be in the right place in the right time in this field that is not easy, that requires a lot of consistency, a lot of tracks, a lot of work, like a lot of work where nobody's going to acknowledge you, and sometimes it's going to come out 2 years after you made the track. Suddenly it comes out like there's, I've just thought about it today, there's a whole album I made for a pretty big label, and it's been 8 months, they still haven't returned a feedback.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, that's crazy, right? And
That
I'm
is
thinking
crazy.
about it, and it's just like, wow, it's disrespectful. It's all these things like my ego wants to tell me. And then, like, you know, if I think about it abundantly, I'm just like, well, I mean, that's they're just a label. I'm gonna make 100
Yeah.
more tracks in
Yeah.
the coming months, and these are gonna come out immediately. And fuck it, and probably it will be put out to the world exactly where when it needs to be put out. Whoever believes in whatever, like fucking universe, divine intervention, whatever.
Right.
It's just everything's a learning curve, right? Um, and that's what I feel about it. What do you feel about, like, I mean, putting yourself in the right place in the right time, coincidences, all this kind of thing? What's your thought about it?
I mean, I'm very much a, like, what's meant for me will come for me, and like if opportunity doesn't happen, there must be something better that I'm supposed to be working towards. Uh, does disappointment hurt? Hell yeah. Like I don't enjoy it. But I also know this is a definitely like sync, and I think even just the music industry in general, it's very much a like you got to be able to just take the punches in the face. Like they're gonna happen. I always tell people like and I feel like I make up the number every time, and I'm not like correct with it. But it's something like Michael Jordan's average was like his shooting average. It's sub 50%, right? It's like probably like a good shooting average is like 45 or something like that. You're not making even 50%, and so it's like in this, if you think you're gonna be like every single song's gonna get placed, that's wild because like every other metric in like the greatest like athletes that sub 50 is great. And so I think like I just realized it's like, no, I'm throwing up shots and then I'm learning. And then I'm learning like, okay, my form was a little off on that. All right, my elbow was out. So for me, it's just like I know I'm going to get some wins, but I know I won't get wins if I'm not shooting enough. And so
Mm.
I'm just like, I need to make more songs because not even just for the sake of like quantity, but I know I become a better writer by writing more. Like it's the only way that happens. You don't become a better writer by just over analyzing writers and only writing a little. And that's even like that's counting the records that no one hears. Like there's records I write that no one needs to hear. There's records I produce that I'm like, I'm just trying stuff out. No one needs to hear that. And I'm training and training and just trying to get better and better. And if next year I don't feel like I'm better than last year, then I need to figure out where am I not growing, where I'm not challenging myself.
Yeah. I feel like the whole thing is there needs to be. I don't remember which one of my guests said it best, but he said, uh wow. He said basically what he was saying is gentle pressure for a long time. It's just like gentle
Mm,
pressure for a long time. It's not, you can't just like burn yourself out. You just need to keep that pressure and keep that pressure. And I feel like what it takes to is kind of being able to show up. It ties to a few concepts. It ties to every time you're on the field, you have to improve 1%.
that's
Like
good.
that, like give yourself that 1% you need to improve. And if you're going through the motions, if you're not feeling like you're growing, you're in the wrong place. And that's why I feel like the sync space is special, because you can get feedback really quick from different people
You really
and
can.
apply it to your craft. And that's the beauty of this. And also I feel like what I would add on top of your things is just like, be careful if you're not getting any feedback. Like, be
Oh
be
yeah,
aware that a lot of the times it's just, I mean, if people don't have the time to roast you when you're not doing something good, then it's probably not going to be significant. Like, that's
mm,
that's that's just my experience of things. And because it's not important enough for them to give it
that's
to you.
good.
So I feel like something to watch out for is just like people saying, "Yeah, yeah, just send it over," kind of thing. Like, "Oh, I'll
Yeah,
shoot you a contract. Let's just sign this shit." And I mean, it's fine if you've finessed it, if you feel like it's all like tight and pristine, and you've done it, and it's like amazing, amazing quality. But especially if you're on your way up, and
yeah,
which is most of the listeners, it's just you have to choose these wisely. You have to tread the water very, very carefully until you find these few companies that you really fuck with and that give you an edge. When I was working with Dave, it was just like amazing, because he basically mentored me into a track, into making a banger. Like, I did basically everything aside from the mixing on this track we did together, but he guided me towards a final result that was so good, in my opinion, way better than things that I've made before, that I was like, yeah, I would give him. I don't need a percentage of it, even, like, because I've
yeah,
improved so much, but I happen to get a percentage, of course. And it was just, I feel like looking for these opportunities is something that, ev in my opinion, everybody needs to do until they are polished enough to a point where they're like getting crazy placements. They can start doing
yeah.
their own thing, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, that's my rant about that.
Nah, that's super good. Like I think, I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier. Like with the placements that me and Dave got, I remember when he approached me about doing that project, and like he was just explaining like what they were looking for, what they needed. And I'm always like, if I feel like someone knows more than me in something, I'm just gonna ask questions. So I was very much like, I sent over and I was like, is this what you're looking for? What do I need to fix? And he was like, oh, do this and do that. Boom, I did that, and like it worked. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Like a lot of those records are getting placed, and I was like, oh wow, like yeah. And I think you do have to, like, I will strongly ask for feedback if someone, like, that's just me. Even if like I'm confident in a record, I'll be like, let me know if this is what you were thinking. If there's something else that's more on the nose of what you need. Um, just because like I like to live by this idea, like the smartest person in the room is the room. And so like if we're collaborating, it's never like just one of us is the smartest. It's always our combined
mm,
creativity and intellect that's gonna help us push it across the line. So yeah, if I'm collabing and you're not loud enough about your ideas, I'm gonna be like, hey, I need to hear them, because I don't want it to just be my head, because
yeah.
it might still work, but I know we have a better chance of it's all of us thinking this through.
Yeah, that's a great concept. I like it. And I feel like, yeah, everybody should shoot to to collaborate with people who facilitate growth. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing. Like with the environment that I've created, I don't even need to ask. That
Right.
with that's the most impactful thing. I feel like that's the I can say I've really been successful with that, because every person I collaborate with facilitates growth in me.
That's
And
good.
either it's them making a really challenging instrumental for me to lay my vocals on, or they're producing with me and they do their own thing suddenly, and it's just like every collaboration I do facilitates some sort of growth. And then, I'm hopefully the tracks will get placements, but the collaborations have facilitated growth. So when a big opportunity comes, I've grown enough to the point where I can demand certain things because
That's
I
good.
know my shit, and then I can deliver things because I know
Yeah.
my shit.
That's good.
Um, and that's huge, man. I love all of this. I feel like um, I wanna ask you two questions,
Okay.
three questions before we leave. One of them is, what would be your recommendations for people coming up in the sync space, uh, and in general?
Uh I think people coming up in the sing space. One is like it's a very I feel like it's obvious, but maybe it's not. Stop skipping ads on YouTube. Like you're missing out on so much like inspiration and ideas. Um Listen to a lot of music. Like you need to be listening, but you need to listen for like why it works. And just like listen and try to connect the dots of like, oh, maybe that's why this ad used there. That's why this scene feels so good because the music is doing this. Um, and I will always tell people, uh, and I don't think enough artists are utilizing it. Get on your LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn is really like connecting people in different ways. I think that's how we connected was through LinkedIn.
Right.
Um, that's where I feel like when it comes to like music and film and like just the professional industry, that's where conversations are happening. I don't think it's necessarily going to be you just hopping in someone's random DMs on IG. Uh, I think like being able to like look at these companies, read, research, see what they're placing, see what they specialize in, see what type of music they're repping. I think that research is good because like, and I love a lot of people who are doing education in the space, but it's like if someone is giving you a list of libraries, that list is useless if you don't know what they're looking for. If all you do is you grow apples and you're emailing a company that sells oranges, it's you're it's not enough. It's That's not a plan. And you should set yourself up for success by like really looking at these companies, seeing what they actually rep, seeing what they place, and seeing if you fit with it. There's some libraries I'll look at it and I'll look at what they're doing, and I probably could email them, but I'm like, I don't think I give what they're actually looking for. Um, and so I don't pursue it. And I think like you can't you can't be too thirsty. But also like you need to be like intentional with your process and your plan. I think that's the advice I'd give.
Word. Okay. What are you grateful for?
Um, that's good. I'm grateful, and actually, it works right now because I'm at the summer camp I work with. I'm grateful for like the lives I'm able to impact. Um, I think even like one with working with youth, being able to see like a kid find their voice, or a kid be excited to like do art because they know I'm in the room to help facilitate it. It's just like it's a powerful thing that like I I am honored to even be able to hold that space. Um, and I'm grateful for like all those people around me that did the same thing for me. Um, I think there's people who probably saw me as a young artist before I found my voice or found my skill set or was even developed, and they saw the raw material and spoke to me and said it could be something. And so I'm just grateful for those who facilitated it for me, and I'm grateful that I'm able to do the same thing.
Sick. What's a good way for people to connect with you?
If you go to supercleanjames.com, every way to connect to me with me is on there. Uh, right now, I will admit, I will, yeah. If it is summer and I'm at camp, I might not get to you in a couple days. I'm a little sparse. But I will try my best to always get back to you. But yeah, supercleanjames.com should have every way to contact me, whether that's email or socials.
Word. I'm putting it on this on the in the show notes as we
Cool.
speak. And man, I am so grateful for you coming on today. And I know this is the beginning of something great. So yeah, thank you for coming
Nah,
on.
like really, and I know I said it at the top, but like I've like really been a big fan of this podcast. And I just want to say, like, I remember last summer, there were days I was driving and I was like, oh, there's a new episode. I'm going to listen to it. And I really will say, like, I've learned a lot, like, from what you're doing. So I'll also add, I'm grateful for you because, like, I don't, like, really, like, there's episodes I would listen to and be like, oh, I should adjust this. I should do that. That makes a lot of sense. And so just thank you. Like I'm truly, truly honored to be on here because there's so many like goats and big folks that I've seen on this and homies that I've heard that I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing. Like Dave and yeah, it just thank you. Thank you for even thinking of me.
Hey.